Hello. Oh, there's Deb right away. I didn't take you off. Sorry.
Okay.
Hello, welcome to a live Kerfefe break on Deprogram with Keri Smith. Uh, I've been gone for a while. If you guys are a regular viewer of the show of Deprogrammed, I apologize. I've had a really terrible flu for a little over 3 days, and wasn't sure if I could do the show this morning, but I felt because it's tricked me every night this week. It's tricked me. Like I think it's breaking, and then the next day I wake up, I'm like, no. So, but today was able. I feel better. I feel like I'm on the upswing. I have my friend Deb Fillman here with me, and I made an accidental
We
pun on
are
Twitter.
actually friends. We are actually friends, not, like
Yes,
pretend friends or just horde members. We're actually
yeah,
friends.
my friend Deb. Well, I made an accidental pun about your name.
Oh, right.
Deb Fillman's gonna fill me in. Fill me in. Somebody said on Twitter, "I see what you did." I was like, "I didn't. My brain's not working well enough to do that on purpose." Like,
Oh, that's funny.
but welcome. What tell people? Well, before you tell people about where they can find you,
Yeah.
I know I will forget this, so I'm gonna just do some quick announcements. If it's your first time here, this is a live show, usually regularly scheduled on Mondays and Fridays at noon Central Time. And we just kind of have different guests on, talk about what's in the news, talk about different topics. The book that we're currently reading, if you are a paid subscriber and part of our book club, we are going to be discussing political ponerology. This is the book that we're reading right now. And this book there's a new edition out with a foreword by Michael Rechtenwald. This is the copy I would suggest that you get. Michael Rechtenwald, I think, is one of the geniuses of the era that we're currently in, and I would suggest you get this version. Anyway, what else? We have I had some guests I had to reschedule because of the flu. Coming up, I've got an interview with Will Johnson, who some of you guys may know from the Patriot Prayer rallies. And anyway, you bear with me today, guys. Pirate said it's going to get snotty in the chat today. It's going to get a little, I'm going to have a little bit of like trying
It
to
might
stay
get
on track.
naughty here too. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you're getting over something as well, right?
Yeah. Sinus.
I feel like I brought this to myself, Deb, because like a week ago, I saw the Time magazine cover where they said flu season is coming. Get ready for, your mRNA flu shots. And I retweeted it and was like, no thanks. And then I got the flu like really bad. And I'm like, I should
I
do
don't
one of,
think it would have made any difference, honestly, but
I mean, yeah, I still don't want the mRNA shot, but if I were to dunk on myself, I would do one of those like how it started, how it's going tweets. Like how it
exactly.
started is my tweet, like no thanks, flu shot, and then how it's going is me in the bed, like like it's like
Exactly.
yeah, a mummy. Anyway, so remind people who may not be familiar with you. You've been on the show a few times, but remind people where they can find you online and a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so I'm mostly on YouTube at The Reason We Learn, and I do also have a locals at thereasonwelearn.locals.com. And to my great shame, I don't do as much there as I ought to for my wonderful locals members, because I'm in the process of trying to build them a different platform. I'm trying to build a website and forum for people to use as a much better support network for people trying to leave schools, trying to find solutions for their kids, or even just trying to share their expertise with parents who are looking for it. And so I'm only me. I don't have a producer. So it's kind of like create content, try to build, create content, try to build. So I'm there. I also have a Substack where I publish the interviews as podcasts. Don't do a lot of editing to them. So I pretty much just take the audio and put it over there for people's convenience. And occasionally I will write a long form piece out there to delve into some of these topics in more detail. Those are the main places that I am. And of course, Twitter. I'm fairly prolific on Twitter. And I'm there intentionally because there's a lot of news there and I can react to a lot of news, but there are also a fair amount of education influencers. And
Mhm.
I try to engage them. I try to challenge them. I try to amplify them when I think they have something important to offer parents. And I get a fair amount of my ideas there. So I do spend a lot of time on Twitter. And you can find me there on any given day.
I think it's really, I mean, I'm still on Twitter too, and I've talked about this with people who are sort of like, "Oh, it's time we have to leave and go to other platforms." And I just had a show before I got sick with Sean Frasick, who's working with Minds, and I
Mhm.
definitely think it's important to branch out and start like spending time on the
Sure.
alternative platforms. But the thing is, I'm not going to leave the mainstream ones until I get kicked off, because the
Yeah.
mainstream ones is where the majority of the public square is. It's where all the leftists are, and
Mhm.
maybe some people aren't interested in in potentially reaching someone on the left, but I am, and that's where they are. And it doesn't I don't know, it doesn't appeal to me as much to go to an echo chamber where everyone kind of agrees with you on a lot of policy positions. Um,
Well, the problem
and
is that doing that for the last, probably since, I mean, really since Fox News came into being, when the first Bush Gore election, okay, people started, really squaring off and going into their little, you know, echo chambers, for lack of a better term. And I think it's part of why the schools parents woke up to this nightmare of what's going on in my schools, because it's natural. I mean, we want to go where we feel welcome and where we feel like our ideas are being represented. But I think we mistakenly assumed that everybody had the same idea about education, that somehow education was sacred and would be protected from all that, partisan rancor and everything. And actually, it's where 90% of it goes to breed and, metastasize and then go out into the rest of the world. So I stick around on these platforms because it allows me to keep an eye on what the people who absolutely do control these institutions are saying, what they're
mm,
celebrating, what their attitude towards me and you and everybody else who disagrees with them is. We're not going to be very effective
if you
fighting
don't know
them
what's going
if we
on
don't know
in
what
that
they're
world.
saying.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree. It's also why I'm a member of a lot of these different like social justice groups in my local community, just to see what they're doing, what they're planning.
Right.
They'll often just go right in there and tell, like, they're like, "This is what we're doing. This is our strategy, and we're gonna attack the city council, and then we're gonna attack the mayor, and we're gonna do this and that." Like, they're very open about it in these groups.
Very
So,
much. Yep. They're
um,
all over YouTube too. You can find an amazing array of videos where these people are talking about what they plan to do to education, what they plan for families and parents and America. And you could lose a lot of sleep consuming it, but that's kind of what I do. I try to consume this stuff in moderation so I don't go crazy, but just enough to be able to bring people information. And then of course, I get it sometimes from the other side. I'll get, you're a crazy conspiracy theorist, et cetera, et cetera. And it's like, well, have you done this research? No. I just don't believe you. And there's not much you can do. I mean, you can show people things, but if they really don't want to believe you, then they're not going to believe you. But I stand the best chance of reaching a broad range of people on Twitter
on the
rather
main
than some of the other places.
on the mainstream platforms, yeah.
Yeah.
I do just wanna acknowledge a few things in the chat. First of all, thank you, Pirate Tomsky. He's put links to follow you here in
Thank
the chat
you.
so everybody can check you out. And BS is here. Hello, BS. Said she'll be in and out. But Cheeky Mare, guys. Cheeky Mare has a wrench now. She says she'll do her best not to let it go to her head. Thank you, Cheeky, for helping me out with moderating. We do have some porn bots lately, so
Oh
um
yeah.
I don't know
They're,
if you've been getting those,
I'm
but
be getting there. They're like German. There's some of them are German, some are, in some other language I can't read. And but you can tell because they have little X's and stuff. Yeah, it's a
yeah,
mess.
they have like little X's and O's and kisses. Tubby Lumpy says you need more cowbell to break that fever.
Very
Yeah,
good. Yeah.
I need something. I've been taking Theraflu. And this is an announcement I forgot. Ken Lipson says FNT hat. She's a fan. Yes, Ken. This is one of my favorite hats. Now, I get so many people love this hat when I wear it out in the world. It says, because it says up close, it says go woke, go broke. But I'm going to be at the FNT meetup at the end of the month in Orlando. I forgot to say that. So at the end of the month, my husband and I both are going to be in Orlando for Chrissy Mayer's Content House. So if you guys are not subscribed to Chrissy, you should go subscribe. We'll be hanging out with friends like Gino Bisconti. Like, there's gonna be a lot of comedians there. Lila Hart's gonna be there. Alex Stein. There's gonna be a comedy show, and then it just so happens like that same weekend, like right at Halloween, there's going to be a big Geeks and Gamers meetup and a Friday Night Tights meetup there. So if any of you guys are in Florida, I hope to get to see you. I won't be sick by then, surely. So I can say hello, and you don't have to fear getting sick from me. But anyway, that's my last announcement. Okay.
Yeah.
Deb, I told you before we get into, I want to talk to you about school choice, and I want to talk to you about it because I was confused about your position for a while. But before we talk about that, in the last 3 days, like I said, I really have been not very much online at all. I couldn't even get out of bed. Like, it's been like, it really wrecked me. And um this morning my husband was kind of like, welcome back. I'm like, and he mentioned Armageddon. I'm like, what did I miss the
Yeah.
past 3 days? Armageddon is trending. What happened?
The president, I guess, was at a fundraiser, and apparently he just was like musing about how nuclear Armageddon could happen, and because of Ukraine, and he has some very strange methods of trying to sell his policy. And the threat of nuclear war is probably not a good way to go about it, because most people are sane, are going to say, like, why are we antagonizing and messing with somebody that might do that, or where we might be pushed to have to make that choice? Like, why are Americans already are like, why are we spending all this money over there when gas in California is like, what is it now, $7-8 a gallon or some ridiculous thing?
Crazy.
People are justifiably um concerned that our policy towards Ukraine is not coherent and doesn't seem to have anything in it for us.
Yeah.
Right? Like, the whole argument is like, well, we don't want to have a nuclear war, or well, we might have to have a nuclear war. And it's like, I don't know. It feels like we're paying
So is that basically,
protection money or
is
something.
that why he's saying that? And I haven't caught up on all of it. Is
I
that why
don't know. I
sort of a
can't
form
think
of
of any
emotional
logical reason
manipulation?
why.
Like we have to give money or there will be nuclear Armageddon. Is that kind of it?
I don't think so. I think it's more just like, you know, it could come to this. It could come to this. So we're good and scared all the time. And I'm not really sure he why he would do that, or why he would say that. It's kind of a mystery to me. Like, he said the risk of nuclear Armageddon is at its highest level since 1962. And, it's like, why are you saying this? I can't think of any reason other than for people to be like looking to his government, and then so he can say, I prevented it if it doesn't happen. Like, he can take credit for hey,
Yeah.
you're all still alive. I did that. Like, I don't know. What is his plan?
That makes me think of, I've told this story before. My friend who worked in the pharmaceutical industry, well, actually, she worked for it was basically a PR firm for a pharmaceutical company, and what she was a great writer,
Yeah.
and her job was to plant stories and write stories about problems months in advance, before, like 6 months in advance or something, before the pharmaceutical company would then put out a drug to fix this problem that there's now been
Yeah.
a lot of buzz about. So she
Yeah.
would create buzz about this problem you might be having, and then magically 6 months later, like, "Oh, we've got a solution. Here it is." And it's sort of
Yeah.
like that makes me think of what you're saying. It's like, I fixed that problem I told you might happen, like, you didn't fix anything. You just
Thanks to me, we're
Yeah.
not in a nuclear war. And it's like, it doesn't make sense, because most people look at the policy and say, you're literally you're fighting a proxy war with the largest nuclear arsenal on the planet. Like, maybe don't do that. And then, of course, if you say that, people say that you support Putin. It's like, no, I'm pretty sure I can draw the distinction between supporting, a megalomaniac war criminal and supporting money laundering Nazis.
Yeah.
Like, I know I can opt out of supporting either one of those. How about that?
Yeah.
Just, I don't see the upside, and people are stuck either way. Their Russian people are not Putin, and the Ukrainian people are not Zelensky and the little whatever it is, the group of people over there that are not so nice either. But I just think it's funny. Somebody's put up a tweet. It says, "You won't have to worry about my tweets when I'm president," Joe Biden says, and
Yeah, I saw that.
July of 2020, and then it's President Joe Biden says the risk of nuclear Armageddon is at its highest level. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, hope the 81 million are happy, but first of all, we have to believe that that's true. And I mean, I guess when you remember, if you say highest level since 1962, everything's relative. That was really, really bad, and we really haven't been even close since then. So, like, how high do we have to go?
Yeah. I'm
But I
gonna put
definitely think we're playing with fire, for no good reason.
this is
Yeah,
the
there it is.
this is the
Yeah,
tweet you're talking about. You won't
exactly
have
the one.
to worry about tweets when I'm president. President Joe Biden says the risk of nuclear Armageddon is at its highest level since the 1962 Cuban. I mean, this is
Yeah.
so irresponsible just to even for him to be saying stuff like this as the president and creating that kind of hysteria and panic.
Well, while
Armageddon.
he's also sending, hundreds of millions of dollars to schools for mental health of children. I grew up in the late 70s and 80s, okay, during the whole USSR is going to blow us to smithereens, like we were having duck and cover drills at school. And while it was pretty much the only thing we're really worried about, except for, like gas prices and inflation were bad then too, but this is worse. In my opinion, it's worse now. People say it was worse then because the taxes were higher and we weren't coming off of a lot of prosperity, but percentage wise we're pretty bad. Like since the depression, things are actually really bad right now. They're just hiding it better because we have all of this circus and stuff. So I remember being super stressed out my whole childhood about were we going to be here tomorrow? Was there going to be like a big mushroom cloud over New York City? I grew up in New York area. Were we going to be blown away the next day or the next day or the next day? And we've got all this stuff going on, and then the president of the United States says this stuff. I'm just wondering what they're teaching about it in school. What are they teaching the kids about this brinkmanship in school while they're busy teaching them about every other thing is horrible? This is just one more thing they're going to add to the horribleness of life. And I just find it bizarre, that this is what he says out loud, even if he thinks it. Then again, we know he's kind of touched.
Yeah. I don't think he even thinks it though. I don't know.
Well, somebody
Um
said actually that there's like a 6 out of 5 chance that he didn't even know what he was saying.
that's I mean, you have to laugh at it. I feel like I don't think he's very fully there. I think a lot of us would probably agree. Maybe sometimes he's more with it than others, but I definitely don't think he's the person pulling any strings.
No,
So
definitely not. Definitely
it's
not.
just like this figurehead. Well, okay. If there are other things you think I need to know about, drop it in the chat. Film, help Deb Fillman fill me in on what I've missed. The last thing
Yeah.
I saw really that I was able to like really pay attention to before I kind of just went into this fog was Loretta Lynn passed away, which is so
Yeah.
sad. And but
She
I
was
real
90 though, right? Wasn't she like
yeah,
90? Yeah, okay. I mean, it's still sad, but I'm just saying,
yeah, she lived a great
thankfully,
life.
she had a
And
long life.
like
Yeah.
2 days before she passed away on Facebook, she posted this Bible verse that I just thought was really like, sometimes people they know when the end is coming. They know when they're close. And she posted this Bible verse that just I felt like, oh, she knows. Like she posted John 3:20-21. Everyone who does evil hates the light and will not come into the light for fear that their deeds will be exposed. But whoever lives by the truth comes into the light so that it may be seen plainly that what they have done has been done in the sight of God. And I just thought, wow, like what a message to go out on.
For real.
Anyway, it's one of the last things I saw. That and then this, I do want to put this on the screen for a second. This is just a laughing moment, Deb. You probably saw this. Let's see.
What is it?
Uh, so Biden said somebody pulled together some of his quotes recently, where here he is saying, "I got raised in the black church. I got my education in the black church." He also said, "I probably went to shul more than many of you did," so appealing to Jewish people. And then I was sort of raised in the Puerto Rican community at home politically. Let's just watch this for a second. Can you guys see it?
Yeah.
Here. Okay.
Oh my God.
I got raised in the black church. He knows I'm not kidding. I got my education for real in the black church. And that's not hyperbole, it's a fact. I probably went to shul more than many of you did. You all think I'm kidding. He can tell you I'm not. I was sort of raised in the Puerto Rican community at home politically. I just have one thing to say. Hang on. All right.
No. No.
There you go.
It's
That's
like
a little bit dope. Come on. I tell you, my man.
the pandering. The pandering.
I got
Okay.
raised in the black church. He knows I'm
Wow.
education.
So it made me think of this from The Jerk. I was born a poor black child. Steve Martin.
Oh my God. He has more of a claim to that in that movie than Joe Biden does.
Yeah. I mean, how many fictitious pandering backgrounds I was practically raised in the black church, guys, and the Jewish shul and also the Puerto Rican community. I mean, I was practically raised in it. Like,
how does this work on anyone? Like, I want to meet the consultant that said, yeah, say that. That's good. People will go for that.
Like, it doesn't.
I sure hope not. That doesn't speak very well of the audience if they go for that. If they listen to that and they're like, "Oh yeah, I'm going to vote for him." That sounds so sincere. And you notice how his eyes are getting smaller? What's up with that? They're getting really, really small.
No.
It's like, what is happening to him? His eyes are like little slits.
I have not noticed that, but I'll pay attention to it from now on. As he's getting older, did he also have hot sauce in his pocket? I'm sure. That was the Hillary Clinton pandering, stealing
Meanwhile,
the Beyonce
when
line.
Donald Trump ate that taco salad or tostada or whatever it was, oh my God, we never heard the end of it. And I'm not saying that was good either, trust me.
No.
But it's bad, period. Like, if it's stupid and insulting, it's stupid and it's insulting. Like, just don't do it. It's dumb.
It's almost, there's a place for it if you're doing it self-consciously, like making fun of yourself. I'm not saying that's what Trump was doing, but I think that's what Trump should do. Or people just to kind of make fun of it, because it's like, hola, like, I love the Latino, that's sort of what his taco eating thing felt like.
Exactly.
And it was funny because it was just so ridiculous.
Exactly.
But the media raked him, like you said, we never heard the end of it about his taco pandering. And yet this guy is like, I was practically raised in your ethnicity here.
You know what would be really great, and I think would make a great screenplay, is if you had a politician. They've done a lot of political movies, right? There was one with Warren Beatty. I can't remember the name of it. And then you had the other one, the candidate. There've been a bunch of election movies. But I'd love to see one where the candidate just tells the truth. Almost like take being there with, crazy people and, one of those election movies and mush it together, where the candidate just gets up and says, I've actually never met anyone whose nationality or whatever. So I'm completely clueless, but here's what I do know. You guys need to eat and there's no food, whatever. It's like
here's what I think. Yeah.
Here's the policy that humans would, need or whatever. And just kind of tell the truth. I'm pretty sure you guys put your pants on one leg at a time too, when you wear them. So, it would be funny.
That's Trump was a little bit like that. I think that was why he had so much appeal. Of course, when he first was coming up, I was in the echo chamber in the group that really despised him without knowing very much about him. I just despised him. I thought I knew a lot about him. Yeah. And I didn't really understand at that time when I heard people say, well, he tells the truth. He tells it like it is, no matter what. And I didn't understand that until a few years later when I started leaving that social justice world and then actually listening to some of his speeches. And I finally I understood what they meant. I'm like, he does, not always, but sometimes he's just very matter of fact. He's blunt, like a normal person. And I was talking about this on my last show with Sean. The way he would use humor, the way he would just kind of, when somebody said, isn't it true that you said such and such about women? And instead of apologizing or clarifying, and he would just be like, no, I only said that about Rosie O'Donnell. Like, he would just totally make a joke out of it in a normal person way. I think he had more of that than anyone. I would love to see someone like that,
but not him.
But not him. I'd like to see another.
I'm done. I'm done.
Yeah.
But
I did want to put one other thing on screen. Now, this is not a laughing. That Biden thing makes me laugh. This doesn't make me laugh. This makes me a little angry. So I'm warning you guys. This makes me mad. Maybe to make you upset too. Did you see this bunch of tweets from Robbie Starbuck?
No.
Okay, so I'm just going to read through this because I think this is a huge story. If you guys haven't seen this yet, go and find the tweets, go and find the articles that he links to, because this is pretty crazy. Thread, DHS coordinated, the Department of Homeland Security coordinated with a group called Election Integrity Partnership, EIP, to censor Biden's opponents. I'm on the EIP's list along with Charlie Kirk, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Donald Trump Jr., Jack Posobiec, and more. You know who else is on the list? Cat Turd.
Cat Turd.
Yeah. And more. Yeah, I'm about to show you the list. I was censored while I ran for Congress. Biden's regime ended up paying the EIP groups, so the groups that made up this election integrity partnership. Biden, when he became president, paid them over $12 million. Like, basically for doing his bidding during the election. Okay. For all of us, this was a gross violation of our rights and a blatantly illegal act by the U.S. government. In my
100%.
specific case, this was state-sponsored election interference. In this thread, I'll explain who's involved and what they did. They crossed lines that cannot be uncrossed. This is who makes up the EIP, the Election Integrity Project. It's made up of several groups. Stanford Internet Observatory, University of Washington Center for the Informed Public, the Atlantic Council's DFR Lab, and analytics firm Graphica. Screenshots below show the grant money that each of them received from the Biden admin.
Wow.
This is from an article about it. The partners all received federal grants from the Biden administration in the next 2 years. The National Science Foundation awarded the Stanford and UW projects $3 million in August of 2021 to, quote, study ways to apply collaborative rapid response research to mitigate online disinformation. This right here, they're getting rewarded for censoring, and now they're getting paid money to study how to censor more and how to do more propaganda, political propaganda.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
Well, that just hopefully ends the discussion as far as, well, it's just a platform. They're just platforms. They're just, they don't have any obligation to let you, speak or whatever, because they're private companies, blah, blah, blah. When the government does this or a candidate does that, this is illegal. Like, I can't even believe they got away with this.
And I can't see anyone on the left. First of all, I think a lot of people on the left don't ever see stuff like this because it doesn't reach their echo chamber. But if they do see it, I don't know. I think they're just sort of, they become accustomed to shrugging things like this off. But I'm appealing to, if there's someone on the left watching this, like, I'm appealing to deep down, like, this is wrong. The government, the Department of Homeland Security paid these third-party groups to interfere in the election, to censor, okay? Graphica, also known as Octant Data, received its first listed federal grant several weeks after the 2020 election, nearly $3 million from the Department of Defense for unspecified, quote, research on cross-platform detection to counter malign influence. Again, they're getting paid to do more censorship and more propaganda. Nearly $2 million more followed in the fall of 2021 for, quote, research on co-citation network mapping, which tracks sources that are cited together. Deb, I'm just going to finish reading through this because I think it's important.
Go ahead. I have, when you're done, I have something to kind of add to this.
The simplest way to explain, I'm still reading from Robbie Starbuck's thread for anyone who's just listening. The simplest way to explain the way that the EIP works is to compare it to something you already know. You know how the CIA and the DoD use contractors to fight battles that they don't want to be seen fighting in an official capacity? That's essentially the EIP, but acting as a ministry of truth. Yeah. How it worked. The DHS, the State Department, the DNC, Common Cause, and the NAACP. So they also had these other groups, the NAACP, Common Cause, and the DNC would file tickets with the EIP on posts or people that they wanted censored. The EIP did the dirty work of going to big tech. And then it says Jay Solomon Reports breaks it down perfectly in this piece. And there's a whole piece here we can look at in a second. That's how easy they made it. DHS, the DNC, and others just filed a ticket with the EIP and then the EIP then acted as their messenger to demand that big tech take action on the posts or people flagged by the United States government or the DNC. And their report shows that big tech delivered for them. The EIP created what's been called an enemies list of a select group they branded as misinformation in need of censorship. I was one of them, and have the distinction of being the only one who was running for Congress while the EIP worked to censor us on behalf of the government. So this was their big list. Now, if you take a look at it, this was their hit list of who they really wanted gone during the election season. And again, this is the government using outside contractors to go to big tech, and the DNC working with the government at the time to get these outside contractors to go to big tech to then ban these people. Look at how many of them ended up being permanently banned. Gateway Pundit. I think James Woods didn't he? Didn't he get permanently banned? James O'Keefe.
I love how it says left or right. Wow. Yeah, it looks real even-handed there.
Where does it say left or right?
In the far right.
Oh yeah, they're all right. I didn't even.
I mean, it's like they can't even pretend that it was an effort to get rid of misinformation in general. They can't even pretend. It's like,
this is crazy. Oh, but it's look at number 7 on their list. Cat turd.
Well, we live in sad times when we go to, I mean, Cat Turd's great. Cat Turd has more accurate information than the New York Times. What are we talking about?
Yeah, Sean Hannity's on here. Breitbart's on here. The Right Melissa. Eric Trump, of course, Donald Trump Jr. and Donald Trump is on here, who they ended up banning permanently. Jack Posobiec, Charlie Kirk. I mean, it's just a crazy hit list. And then they have, how many incidents. That's tweets, I guess, that they consider to be misinformation. How many followers these accounts have. Retweets of the incidents.
Spreaders of election and misinformation as determined by these totally disinterested people who have no bias whatsoever.
Right. As determined by groups that included the DNC. I mean, I don't know. It's just crazy.
Yeah.
So
that's like, what would be the equivalent? That's like Stasi level crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, but I can tell you why this is happening without anyone batting an eyelash. And it's, I heard it said best last night when I was listening to a show by Native Liberty. Do you know Native Liberty?
Oh yeah, we're going to be doing a show together soon. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So he's had health issues and he's been gone for a long time. And I noticed he was missing because I'm like, where'd he go? And I went out to check his channel and he had a Where Have I Been update, which is not his most recent broadcast. His most recent is actually about implicit bias. You should go see that one too. But I strongly recommend, I'm going to put the link up in here for you guys. I strongly recommend the one that talks about where he's been. I wish he had a different title on it because even though it's very important for us to support him and his, in getting better, after you get past the first like 5 or 6 minutes where he explains where he's been, the rest of the show is absolute gold. I want everybody to go listen. It's only 25 minutes in total, the whole thing, but he talks about what he's going to do next. And he breaks down, he's coming for everybody. And he breaks down the issues with progressivism and why it's such a big problem. But he also comes after the neocon right, the neoconservatives, the sort of fake conservatives, and what they're doing to kind of, you know, make all this happen. And he makes a point in there that cannot be, you know, overstated or, you know, repeated often enough. And that is that it's not that we misunderstand history or we're failing to pay attention to history. It's that we literally don't know it. History has not been accurately taught in the United States probably ever. It certainly wasn't accurately taught even to me when I was going to school in the 70s and 80s. It wasn't the like sugarcoating history that the left claims I was taught, but it was still was really surface, largely inaccurate, and missing all the components we would have needed to fully appreciate liberty and what it takes to defend it. And so he talks about people like the ones at EIP, and I mean, he doesn't name them by name, but he says, you know, the people now in the managerial class who are kind of running things in the mainstream and all these people, they're actually proud of it. They know they don't know history and they don't care. They are so busy trying to create a new, you know, first of all, to rewrite whatever
their own history,
to create their own history that they literally don't care, and they refuse to acknowledge that in being so arrogant and refusing to learn what they don't know, what they missed, they could be leading us, you know, they can't foresee that they think it's all a constant. Progress is a constant. It always moves forward. We never just self-destruct and civilization ends or whatever. And when you don't know history, of course, you can believe something as farcical as this will last forever. And I'm not even going to do it justice. You have to watch the show. The man is the most well-read, articulate person I've ever heard explain what is wrong with progressivism today and with neoconservatism. And I was just like, you know, absolutely
Hi, Susan.
cheering.
Hi, Susan is asking if you'll put that link on your Twitter to Native Liberty.
Yeah. I absolutely will. It's really important that people watch this show because he just completely nails it. And you know, he's going to be bringing more content like that. But I would strongly recommend that people even go and read from the writers he mentions. He lists writers that we don't teach in school, that most of us haven't read, and that would really help us understand why they're just so messed up. And he also names names as far as who he thinks messed up conservatism. But I guess the point being that if you're looking for help on the right, or you're thinking that, you know, the Republicans are going to save you or whatever, that no, that there is no philosophical fight for liberty going on right now. It's just a battle between who wants to control you. So it's going to be up to each of us individually to defend our liberty. And there is hope there. James did a show with Benjamin Boyce this week, which I also recommend. James Lindsay, who we miss very much from Twitter, but he's been traveling all over, and he sat down for a couple hours with Benjamin Boyce to talk about getting out of your bubble, getting out of the little isolated, you know, metaverse they want you to live in, where they're documenting your every move and gathering your data, and step outside and have more interactions with humans. Resist the here, order your food on the iPad and don't talk to the server, because that's what they're trying to do to us. And that breaks you out of it. And we've got to get back to real grassroots, talking to our neighbors, going door to door, gathering people in public places, things like you do, Keri, where you go to these events and you talk to other humans and you spend time in real life, will have a greater impact on us preserving what we have.
I have
that we
more
like.
conversations off camera than I do on. As people don't, because I think it just naturally, like, when I meet people, even before I left social justice, I don't know, people just kind of talk to me about stuff. And usually it can get pretty deep pretty fast. So it's not really like, I don't know, I just have conversation. It'll be like, you know, meet someone and then like 3 sentences in, we're talking about like, do you believe in God, or like, like it's like, but that just happens. But yeah, I think everybody, if you don't do that, sometimes it's harder to do that in big cities, which is ironic because there's more people there. But because there's more people there, there's less of that sense of community. And when you're in a small town, it's easier to have conversations with every place I go, every coffee shop I go. I know the regulars. I know that, every antique shop. I know we talk like it's just, I don't know. It's something about a small town. So
there's more of us.
do you
There
think it's harder
really
in the
are
big
more of
cities?
us than there are of them. And we just have to remember that. And I think the more we stay in, the more we rely on technology, the more we feel alone, and the more we feel like, we can't possibly push back against any of this, like what they did. I think you might be tempted to read that story and feel hopeless, feel like, well, how can we fight back against that? That's crazy, right? Well, the answer is you can't fight that. But what you can do is you can go out and talk to actual people in real life, and you can do like our founders did, and write up your own pamphlets and hand them out. Go to coffee shops, go to talk to the person at the grocery store. I'm not saying everyone's good at it or everyone can do it, but the more you get out and the more you start conversations with people in real life, the more people get reconnected to their humanity, and the easier it's going to be for them to disregard these narratives. And he said at the conclusion of that video, it's not a spoiler, it's just worth repeating. He said, if you find yourself on the same side and sharing the same opinions with the mainstream media, most of the blue checks on Twitter, the Academy, Hollywood, if you find yourself in really good company, like we all agree on that, you're not part of the Rebel Alliance. You're part of the empire. You're defending the empire.
Yeah.
And so the way you find the other rebels is you have to leave cyberspace.
And well, I would just like to say, if there's someone listening who that doesn't come naturally to you, I don't think that you should go out like with the intention of like, I'm going to go out and tell people what I think about the world today.
No.
That doesn't go over well. Because
just say hello.
Yeah,
how's your day?
Just be normal, be yourself, and the more like people that you meet, like things just naturally come up. Like they'll naturally come up, like your thoughts about the world or their thoughts about the world. But if you are, because I know there are some people who have trouble with like social interactions, and don't go into it like, hi, I'm Keri. Do you know the government hates us? Like,
do you know what my 14-year-old daughter does? And I mean, she's really an example for all of us. When we are out, let's say we go up to, a food counter to order food, or we're in the grocery store and somebody comes like near us, okay, or says, excuse me, or whatever, or we have to say, excuse me to somebody else to walk past them. She finds something about them to compliment. And even if it's just to say, you're so pretty, like she'll do that. My 14-year-old will just say to somebody, you're so pretty, or, I love your earrings, or that is such a pretty color on you, or, whatever. It's usually to other women, but the point is she tries to think of something to make somebody's day, or just say something nice to somebody. Like, I hope you're having a great day today.
Yeah.
Because nothing takes the wind out of the sails of the people trying to divide us and trying to convince us that we secretly hate each other better than eye contact, and not like staring at you eye contact, but just like briefly making that human contact to say, like, I hope you're having a great day. Yeah. Say hi and say thank you to the person checking you out in the grocery store. Don't go, James says, don't go through the self-checkout. Go to where the person's there working and say, if you can, if you're not in a rush or whatever, and just, they chat, they're trained to say, did you find everything you needed, whatever. Even if you didn't, just say like, yeah, great weather we're having, terrible weather we're having, whatever, just like say something. And you will form those little tiny connections that hold civilization together.
Yeah.
Because if you notice what the messages are in the news is that we don't like each other. That, whether it's your race, your gender, your sexuality, your lifestyle, your tattoos, your pierces, your, even your political persuasion, somebody hates you and is out to get you. And that's really damaging.
Yeah.
So I just think we have to get back to being Americans. And the way we do that is we just go out and talk to people.
Yeah.
Little snippets at a time.
Cheeky Mare says, Deb is one of my favorite guests.
Thank you.
And Adam says, one day I hope Keri and all you lovely peeps can see how goofy I am in person. I wish we could all hang out once the totalitarianism starts to wane. Fingers crossed. Oh, that's going to happen, Adam. You'll have to come down to Texas sometime.
I want to go to Texas just to go to Texas, but definitely to see Keri.
We're going to get our house like fixed. Once we get it like really fixed up, we're going to do events and shows and stuff here. We are actually having, I should say this, if you're in the Austin area, we're having a house concert, even though it's not finished yet. We're going to have it. It's kind of looks like a haunted house, which is fine, but there'll be 2 bathrooms that'll be done. We're having a house concert on December 9th. I'll post the info when it's up if you guys want to come.
I wish I could go.
And anyway, there was one other thing I wanted to put up of something you were saying. I can't find it now, but I will put up this Marby Dog quote. Marby Dog, if you don't read the New York Times, you are uninformed. If you do read it, you are misinformed. Mark Twain-ish.
Right.
It's a great quote.
Yeah, it's the Catbox liner of record.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to wrap up this EIP story with just a few more things, because again, I think everybody needs to go and read this article. Here's the Robbie Starbuck thread, and he goes on to show that, yeah, during the course of EIP's communication with big tech, that his accounts on IG and Twitter were put in a search ban, which remains to this day. I'm sure you guys have seen this before. It's when you're trying to search for a person and they don't show up. That happened with James Lindsay on Instagram for a long time. I don't know if
it's still the case with James.
There are certain people, they make it so that you can't find them. It's so wrong. And then he has a couple different news articles about it that talks about it. But basically, this part I think is really important. He says, remember, this coordination, the grant money, the enemies list, the election interference, and the people involved is what we know before discovery in any lawsuits. Imagine the facts after. Speaking of discovery, you know who else was on the list? My lawyer. His lawyer was on the list. And that's, what's her name? Harmeet Dillon. My family came from Cuba, where Marxists have enemies lists to target and silence opponents they fear the most, economic ruin, a committee that removes candidates from ballots, fraudulent elections, plus total control of media, academia, and culture. Sound familiar?
Yeah.
This is the road to hell we're on forever if we don't stand up together to this modern day communist regime masquerading as Democrats. The government crossed an unprecedented line by coordinating to censor Americans and interfere in an election to keep me out of Congress. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The worst part is they're not even really communists. What they are is they're totalitarians and closer to fascists than they are to communists. They don't actually want to like literally control all the, sources of industry and production. They're perfectly content to let the private holders of those companies hold them. They just want to order them about and tell them how to do it, which is closer to fascism. And now we see with this military footing of what, we're going to just keep on getting involved in all kinds of military things to keep us on a constant war footing. That's closer to fascism. And that's where China is. I feel like it's more like, China 2.0,
Yeah.
and, the way they are treating people, the only difference being, of course, that we do have sort of Marxism in education. So where the Marxism really is living is in the academy. As far as the managerial class and our government and all that kind of stuff, they're much closer to the fascists. Yeah. And I think ultimately, as it always was in Germany, it was always a conflict between the National Socialists and the communists, like the Bolshevik communists, and the National Socialists won, but they were still socialists. And then, of course, they were fascists. And that's what we have right now. They're, believe it or not, while they seem to be working together, they're really not working together. It's like a race. It's like a contest. Mm. And I think the fascists are winning. And ultimately, they're served just as well by the communists in education as they would be without them. So
they're so clever too, because they disguise themselves completely by pointing fingers and calling everyone else fascist. Like all of their targets fascist. It's
projection.
It's that projection. It's that thing that narcissists, that psychopaths do. It's that Darvo deny and reverse victim order. Yeah. Jeanette, hello, beautiful lady. She's gave a super chat, $10. Thank you, Deb. Thank you, Jeanette. I'm out of it. She says, I've met Deb in real life, and she's just as real as right here. And I know that one day I'll get to meet Keri in real life as well. We
Yeah,
must
we're
band together.
practically neighbors. She lives north of me. So we went out for coffee one day and we keep meaning to get together. I want to get together again and get our husbands together too, so we can have like actual social life and, but it's
I
tough
might
to
get to
do.
see you guys at the beginning of the year. The knitters invited me to some knitting convention thing that I'm going to in January in that area. So I have to talk to you
Oh,
guys.
yes, please. Oh,
Yeah, yeah,
good.
yeah.
That would be awesome.
Oh,
That'd
and
be
that
awesome.
reminds me, I need to message. Anyway, you guys, this is boring. I'm just telling you things I'm remembering.
So
Lissa
fun.
K, if you're watching, Lissa K, I know I owe you a message. Okay. Well, so I wanted to get into the school choice topic because I really didn't understand your position until very recently. And I was hoping you could explain it to people like me who are maybe a little slow
Sure.
to catch up. Before I do, this is that article about what we were just talking about. If you guys want to go find it, this is the article about the EIP, the Election Integrity Project, and you can find this at justthenews.com. The headline is Outsourced Censorship. Feds Used Private Entity to Target Millions of Social Posts in 2020. So you guys can go read that whole thing. Okay.
Crazy.
So Deb, I saw you, I'll just do a confession. I saw you kind of going back and forth and engaging in conversations and stuff online about school choice and about how you don't think it's going to fix the public school problem, which I don't either. But also, you seem to be like thoroughly against in my school choice. Would that be accurate to say that you're against
Yes,
school choice?
and it's really important to help people understand I'm against school choice TM. In other
Okay.
words, the brand. It would be like saying, "You mean you're against Black Lives Matter?" And it's like, "Yes, I'm against." It doesn't mean I don't think Black lives matter. It means I'm against BLM. It's like I'm against SC. Okay?
Right. I get that.
So I've obviously, being libertarian, I am 100% for education liberty. I think that parents should should be the sole deciders of like how their kids get educated, when, where, by whom, and even what they're taught. And a lot of people are so accustomed to there being sort of standards and records and all this that they can't imagine how that would work, except for over 100 years in the United States. That's exactly how it did work. And we had the highest literacy rate in the Western world, even amongst the poor, not slaves, of course. Yes, we had problems with that, but we still had very high literacy rates, even amongst people who were, not rich. Whereas in Europe, that was not the case. And in other parts of the world, it's still not the case. There are still high illiteracy rates. So formal education run by the government is relatively new, okay, in the United States. And it's definitely fairly new in the world. And yet we're so dependent on it.
Can I underline that point when you say it's relatively new? I've talked about this on the show since I got back from Europe. I got to go visit my husband when he was doing a tour there and last month. And one of the big takeaways that I keep thinking about, and it's changed the way I think about a lot of things, is just how new the American experiment is. When you're in a place like that that's so old, and you can't help but be reminded of like our history is really very green, like we're very new. And so to say that the government being in charge of education is a relatively new thing, that's not false. That's true. It's relatively new. So
Right. And
I just want to interrupt you for that. But yeah.
No, it's okay. And it's easy to say, like, well, our founders were all homeschooled and, well, most of them were rich men. Most, not all. But on top of that, the people who went and fought for their freedom were also literate. They were reading pamphlets by John Locke. Farmers were carrying them around they were pamphleteering as part of how they gained support for the revolution, for the Declaration, which made them all traitors, and then also for the revolution. So it was the ability to read that made that possible. So and not just read, but write, because you had to be able to write and print and disseminate the written word, even in secret, even, like with the government, like looking over your shoulder, across farmlands and we didn't have radio, we didn't have TV. So this notion that it won't happen without government making it happen really, first of all, indicts parents as being horrible people, like way worse than even the worst parents today are, in my opinion. And it sort of ignores reality. It ignores history. So there's that. I'm against validating the idea that it's okay for government to mandate, compulsory school attendance between this year and this year, school as defined by them, education as defined by them, and in the dollar amount, paid for with the dollar amount collected through confiscatory tax policy by them, managed by them, disseminated and redistributed by them. So school choice is just a redistribution scheme creating another entitlement. And what is amazing?
That.
Okay,
Explain that.
So let's just take Arizona as an example, where you've got one of the most comprehensive, quote unquote, universal school choice plans that's just passed into law, and everybody's celebrating. People on the right are celebrating. This is this great win for the right, this great win for Republican governor. Okay, they plan to give, it's not means tested, so that makes it, more fair in the sense that you don't have to be poor to get it. Okay, it's taxpayer dollars, but they're going to give $7,000 per kid to parents from the public purse for the use of, in an ESA account, education savings account. It's like a little debit card, okay, to use to purchase, approved educational, like either a private school, parochial school, homeschool supplies, tutors, whatever you need, right? Micro school, whatever. And a lot of people are like, well, that's awesome. They're getting their money back. And like, yeah, except the vast majority of people don't pay $7,000 per kid. The government pays more than that, but they're collecting tax from everyone. They're collecting tax from you and you don't have children. Okay. Yeah. So it's effectively then a subsidy. And a lot of people have argued with me and said, no, Deb, over their lifetime, they paid those taxes, so they're getting it back. And over their life after their kids leave, they'll still be paying it. So it all comes out in the wash. And I'm like, okay, in theory, let's let you have that argument. Let's let you have the argument that in some way, shape, or form, they're getting tax money back, and that's always a good thing. Okay. So throw out the argument that it's a subsidy creating effectively another entitlement that you're going to be, held hostage to. What about the strings that usually come with money that flows through the government middleman? Because we taxpayers kind of want to know where it went, don't we? Right. And I've tried raising this with people. I've said, okay, it goes out equally. The government's not really going to ask, what your philosophy of education is or where you plan to spend it. We also know that a lot of private schools are woke, et cetera. So you're now going to be not just continuing to subsidize the public schools, because they're not losing all the money. They're still going to get some money per kid. They're not going to get all of it because your kid's not in attendance. Right? In fact, it's one of their selling points. We're not depriving the public schools of money. It really isn't. In fact, it's going to be great. And we're going to end up spending less. It'll be a savings to the taxpayer. So the public schools continue to exist. You're not going to get rid of them. The unions continue to exist. And you just get some of what it's $13,000 to $20,000 they usually spend per pupil. So you get 7, they get 6. But there's no kid there to educate. Okay. So they're getting 6 for nothing. Okay. So there's that. Okay. And now their influence, the government's influence, is in a place it never was before.
Which is in how you choose to educate your child outside of the public.
Because they're giving you the money. So I have a diagram. If you'd like, I can bring it up. I can show you. It's easier to show.
Let's show us. Because I think a lot of people just naturally in the wrong thinker community are sort of like, more choice is better if, the government's, I think they think of it as like, well, if the public school system still exists and we haven't been able to, it would be helpful to get that money since I pay taxes, to get that money from the government to educate my child how I want.
And in the near term, like anything else, I'm sure the first generation of people who collected Social Security were helped. There will be people who'll be helped. I'm not going to deny reality that there's going to be somebody out there who gets money to go to a private school that actually is better, and that one student, whatever. But what I'm saying is, from a moral and ethical standpoint, you are saying, I'm okay with government continuing to control this process and hold the money and distribute the money and have it subject to political whims, because now the politicians running for office can run on that platform and say, I want to increase the amount. I want to decrease the amount. I want to put strings attached so we know where that money is going. I don't want strings attached. So, you can have more freedom. And the people caught in the middle are going to be the kids in the schools themselves, or the providers who take the money, and the parents. And so here's a diagram that shows you, okay, this one says it's a bait and switch, and I tend to agree. So you're given this sales pitch that it's an escape from failing public schools. Then, the parents are given the very broad list of where you can spend it, but it's still a list decided by the government. Let's say, for example, I think it would be educational to take my kids to the Grand Canyon, and I want to buy plane tickets or take a month off, and I want to go do that, and whatever. And I think that would be a good use of those dollars to rent an RV and go to the Grand Canyon, whatever. Is the government going to let me do that? What if I want to take the money and I tell the government I'm homeschooling them, or I've got them in a little private program or whatever, but really I've got them watching PBS all day and I'm using the money to get my nails did? I mean, we don't know. Who's going to audit that? Who's going to check into that? And mind you, if it were the parents' money, it's none of my business. In other words, if the government's not stocking an account full of money and giving you a little debit card, if that's what you do with your kid, that is your business.
But it's the taxpayers' money.
None of my affair.
Yeah.
But when I'm even a little bit funding it, a little bit subsidizing it, it does become my business and your business and everybody else's business. So, okay, you have these choices. The parents, they're telling parents, you can go choose your school. Has anyone ever applied for a private school? It's an application process. They don't take everybody. Most private schools already have waiting lists after COVID. A lot of people were dissatisfied with the public schools and dug deep and figured out how to take out loans and mortgage their house, get a second job, and put their kids in private school without government help. And they're full. Arizona, for example, has fewer, I think, than 500. I don't know. They have somewhere between 450 and 550 private schools for the whole state. They can't educate more than like 3,000 kids or something right now. And they have like tens of thousands who are applying for these accounts. Where are they going to spend them? They're going to have pop-up schools everywhere. Is everyone going to homeschool? Or are they going to all be on little technical schools, virtual schools run by ed tech companies? Who knows? We don't know. But the school choice people don't really care. They're like, they'll have a choice now. The other thing is, private schools, to be better, have to be different in some ways the government might not allow. For example, they might have to reject kids because they're not academically capable of doing the work. Will the government be okay with that? Maybe they have to reject kids because they have a special need the school can't meet. They don't have the staff for that. Will the government be okay with that? So you see what I'm saying? It's like to say your parents can choose is not necessarily the case. Remember with Obamacare? You can choose your doctor, and then everybody grabbed their subsidy and ran to sign up for a primary care provider, and they said, we're not taking new patients. We don't have any space for you. And you were left with like the dregs of whatever was left. Money isn't access. All right. Then you have the potential at a minimum for government to change the law. Okay. What are they allowing? What are they not allowing? What kind of new regs? There was just a decision in court that came down saying that because nonprofit schools, religious schools and other nonprofits are getting a tax break, they're effectively funded by the government already and have to adhere to federal title laws, Title IX, title, all these titles for special needs kids and free lunch and athletics and all this kind of stuff because they're getting a tax break. That's without even an infusion of cash through the parents. So that I personally think they've misunderstood nonprofit law, but that's wending its way through the courts already. So they could change.
So you're saying because the government is going to be giving money to taxpayer money to parents for school choice to be able to choose to, educate their kids however they want, that the government could therefore also have a say in like, well, hey, guess what? You have to validate pronouns in your homeschool.
100%.
Okay.
And even if it's only state money, here's the other problem. So it's state money. But the fact we already know from the Biden administration that they are leaning towards telling states will withhold your federal money if you have a school choice program in your state that doesn't require that. So as long as there's a federal Department of Education lording it over you with a big pot of money of their own and saying, oh, Governor Ducey, you've passed this wonderful school choice plan. That's super. So you guys are giving taxpayer dollars, which of course, is taking money away from the public schools and you're supporting things that we don't think you should be supporting. You're maybe deprived. Some of those schools are depriving kids of their civil rights, according to us. So we're going to hold back on giving you your federal money unless you do things the way we want you to do them. Absolutely, they'll do that. They've already said they'll do that. Who's going to sue them? Who's going to stop them?
Right.
So my concern is for the parents and the kids. Going through the process of applying to a private school is very stressful for the child. You got to take tests, you got to go to interviews, and that's if the school really is better. If the school just takes all comers, you got to check, you got money. Okay. Is it really going to be better? Or are they just in it to take your money? So the schools that ostensibly are better, and many of them, by the way, are already woke, the ones with the strict admissions policies, NAIS schools, some of the other schools in these big accrediting groups, they're already super woke. They're more woke than some of the public schools. Some of the Catholic schools are already using Common Core and doing comprehensive sex ed, even in the Catholic schools. The Episcopal school in Dallas is so far gone, it's crazy. So the notion that private school is always better because it's private, also not correct. There are some public charters that are phenomenal by comparison to some of the privates. So you really have to do your homework. So now the parents, they get a pile of money and they think, I'm free, except you're not. Let's say you go ahead and you get your kid into that private school. You're super excited. You come up with the balance to pay because it's not going to cover the total tuition, most likely. Even if it's only 12 grand, you still got to come up with 5 more. So you put it in. Now, used to be a private school contract was like a page. Now it's 4 or 5 pages, and it refers you to a school handbook that's like 500 pages. The school handbook details every last little thing that you must comply with, parents and students, or they can kick your butt out and keep your money. And that can include what they call parental support, parental agreement, whatever. They censor your speech. They quite literally tell you to sign away your freedom of speech to criticize the school, complain about the school, ask too many questions about the school. And you've signed it, the enrollment contract, they get to keep your money and kick your kid out. Here in Charlotte Latin School, they took 2 kids who've only known that school their whole life. Parents paying through the nose. Parents respectfully, with a group of like 60 other parents, put together a PowerPoint presentation to say, we would like to do diversity, equity, inclusion differently without the critical theory, please. Can we not be racially essentialist? They took the guy who was kind of like one of the leader parents of that, called a meeting. The headmaster called a meeting with him. And while the dad was in the meeting, they frog marched the kids to their lockers, cleared their lockers out, and dumped them on the sidewalk without so much as a buy your leave.
Wow.
Just traumatized the heck out of them, kicked them out, kept their money. Why? Asked too many questions. So telling parents, this is guaranteed going to be better. We're going to give you this money. And now you've voted for a politician and you're like, he's giving me this out. You're taking the money now. You probably can't give it back. Now, what are you going to do with it? And a lot of these parents are the same parents who said, I don't want to homeschool, or I can't homeschool, or virtual school isn't for my kid. They need in-person learning. And the only thing that's going to be left available to them will be, guess what? Virtual school that they probably didn't want in the first place. So, but who's going to be ready and waiting, and who's best positioned to provide them with something they can buy? People like the Walton Family Foundation and Bill and Melinda Gates and Chan Zuckerberg and all these, they are pouring money into these ed tech companies, something called GSV, Global Silicon Valley. Ed tech companies that create, online curricula and all kinds of stuff, where they'll set up centers, micro schools even, where kids can come and sit on a computer with a minder and do their, virtual school collaborative projects, all this other stuff. And what goals does this kind of learning serve? Mm-hmm. Does it serve the goal of liberty? Does it serve the goal of an educated, knowledgeable individual person who can write with a pencil and actually knows how to read a book? No. It serves the UNESCO goals of the high-tech labor pool that knows how to interact with AI and all that other stuff. Now, this is where they tell me I have a tinfoil hat and I'm a crazy person, whatever. And they may be right. I'm just looking at where the money's, what I'm saying is, right. I can't prove that that's what will happen. I'm just telling you that there aren't enough private schools. It takes at least about 2 years in Arizona to open the doors of a school from scratch. Okay. Yeah. To get all the approvals and everything. And I highly doubt all those parents want to suddenly become homeschoolers. Oh, another point. Homeschoolers in Arizona who take ESA money will not file a homeschool affidavit. What that means is they will not be considered under the law homeschoolers. And they admit in the FAQ for the statute that they did that to protect homeschoolers who don't take the money from any regulations that might come along that would control what they spend their money on.
Wait. Okay.
So in other words, you're not required to take the money. If you're homeschooling and you want to file an affidavit saying, I'm homeschooling, I don't want anything to do with you.
Yeah.
Keep my money, go away. Okay. You can still do that in Arizona. You file an affidavit and say, I'm homeschooling. That's your compliance with the mandatory let us know what you're doing laws, which I also disagree with. But okay. The people who say, I want to homeschool, but I want money, they're saying, that's fine, but you're not going to be classified as a homeschooler.
As a homeschooler.
You do not,
okay.
You don't fill out an affidavit to say that you're a homeschool. You are just going to be an ESA recipient who is not assigned to a specific school. So they're probably not sure what it's going to be, but they did that because there will likely be more audits, more regulations, more requirements and compliance because they're getting the money. So they admit on the one hand, we need to protect these people from possible regulations. And then they turn around and tell me I'm a crazy person for suggesting there will be regulations on the people going to private school and on the schools and on the home-based educators who take the money.
I see.
So obviously they know that could happen. And when it's open to the political process, which taxpayer dollars always are, there will be arguments about it. The unions in Arizona will be constantly breathing down the necks of these politicians. You need to audit this. You need to check where that money is going.
Government funded. Because it's
still government funded education.
Okay.
You could call it choice all day long, but it's still government funded. And so what's happening here is they're going to these eligible service providers, ESPs, whoever's going to take the money. So there's give it to you and say, go spend it. But the government's going to go to those people that are taking it and saying, well, we'd love to allow you to take these dollars, Mr. Just like they did with doctors, but you're going to need to do for compliance to take the money. And then they'll have these public-private partnerships where they're not really doing exactly what they want and staying true to what they want because they want to take the money. And the data, they'll have to submit data to the government. These are how many students we have. This is how they're testing. This is how much we're spending. This is our equity compliant. This is what we have, blah, 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 blah. Even if they don't change their curriculum at all, they're going to be sending data back to the government about your kid because they're taking money. And data metrics are currency these days. Okay. They will force the use of more tech into the school because how else can we aggregate all and disaggregate all this data? And then you're going to have attitudes and dispositions and value systems and competencies that can be measured with computers and data, which is the antithesis of traditional education. And guess what's going to find its way in? The CRT and the SEL and all the things. And once and again, you're just going to have an expansion of the government reach into the private sector, making it not even remotely cost effective for a truly private school anymore.
This website, by the way, somebody in the chat, the website that Deb has pulled up, somebody in the chat said that Google's making it hard to find this site. Can you tell people what the URL is again?
It's academicintegritymovement.org.
academicintegritymovement.org. So you guys can go find that there. So let me take this off the screen and just ask you.
Yeah, that's fine.
So you've laid out, and I hope people can understand, maybe if they didn't understand before, kind of like me, like why you oppose school choice TM.
Right. So people ask me, what do you want to do instead?
What do you want to do instead? What would you want to see instead?
Well, and it's a tough pill for people to swallow, but I do think, I guess I'm a diehard optimist and I see people doing it, so I know it's possible. Right now you have choice. I know it doesn't feel like it. Because there's money. You've got to spend some money, and most people have a childcare problem. They don't have an education problem. They have a childcare problem. I need to go to work, so I can't stay home and literally be the homeschool parent for my kid. And so what I say to people is start with summer and ask yourself, what do I do each summer to solve that problem? Okay. You have to solve the problem some kind of way, right? In the summer. And if you're already using a government provided summer, I don't know what to say then, but let's say you're not. Let's say you've cobbled together some kind of solution for the summer. I would say put on your creativity hat and start thinking about solving the child supervision problem first. And then the education piece is second. It really is. The first thing you need to do is build community. It's not the second or third thing. You'll go, well, then what about socialization? I'm like, that's actually your first job, not your second or third. So the first job is find out who else in your community is dissatisfied. Even if you can round up 3 people, just go find, like 2 or 3 other people besides you. Your kids don't have to be the same age. I mean, a wide spread of more than 5 years might be kind of hard, but they don't have to be exactly the same grade. That's arbitrary. And find those people who are dissatisfied and start to talk about your lifestyle needs, your childcare needs, your budgets. Okay. See if each of those people can find 3 people. We all have different friends, right? If you could get together, let's say 6 to 10 people, and you said, look, I've got $1,000 a year, and now you've got $10,000. Okay. Let's say you could potentially start a micro school all by yourselves where you 10 people get together and you form a private education association legally in your state. There's a process for that. You can look it up. Each state's different. I can't tell you off the top of my head what it would be. And you work out who amongst you has the most flexible schedule and is willing. You can take turns and shifts being the adult supervisors. Okay. If that's not going to work, go to your local church, synagogue, community center, etc. Go to your local college, university, whatever. See if there are student teachers, even, or just students in some area. Meet them, interview them, make sure they're not crazy people. Okay. Do background checks. See if for a lower than usual fee, like babysitting fees, basically, they will sit in a room in the basement of a church. Lots of real estate in churches during the week not being used. Okay. See if you can find some of those spaces, get 1 or 2 adults or, students to sit there with the kids. And then you go find used books, used curriculum, whatever, and you put together what you want your kids to learn. And that's second, right? But the first thing is to solve the problem of where is my kid going to be safe? Where are they going to be well cared for with values that I can support, manners and expectations about their behavior, play outside, play with each other. They're going to learn more even just hanging out with each other than they would in some classroom on a Chromebook. Okay. So you got to work with other people. You've got to go grassroots, and you will be amazed at what you can do. Believe it or not, some of the poorest people in America have been doing this for years because they're relegated to the worst schools. And some of those parents have said, I'm not waiting for Superman. I'm not waiting for somebody to come and save me.
Yeah.
The people least likely to do this are the people who have more means than they realize. Suburban families, urban families who are middle class. They have more resources than they've even stopped to think about. They think it has to be a school, or it has to be decided for them, or what if it's not accredited, and all these things that just don't matter. You're parenting your children. Reframe your mindset away from I need school to I need to find a way to parent my children 365 days a year, all the hours of the day, even if I physically can't be present. And then work your way backwards. What does that mean? It means I need supervision. It means I need safety. It means I need space. It means and you just find other people who share that problem and start working on it. Meet together, plot it out. I've seen people do amazing creative things. Look at how people pull themselves out of disasters, hurricanes, tornadoes, etc. I'm telling you, we as Americans and we parents who love our kids, we have way more inside of us than we give ourselves credit for. Your second step is figuring out the curriculum. And it's insane the amount of choices that you have, and they don't cost a ton of money, and you don't have to do everything on a computer. Use books, use curriculum. There's secondhand curriculum that you can buy, and you can use a library card and the internet for free and print stuff out or whatever to get so much of what you need. There's nothing that you can't learn that you can't access for free.
Yeah. I just want to put a couple of the comments that people are responding to what you're saying. CB says, I'm poor. We homeschool. We make it work. The sacrifices are so worth it.
So worth it. You will get your kids back. You will get your family back.
Pyro says, but that's like doing a startup while also having a full-time job.
Well, except for one thing, your startup is trying to make money. So, you have a different goal. And the goal of a startup usually is I got to be profitable. So I'm putting money in and I'm expecting to get something out. You're trying to set something up. And once you set it up, you'll be able to kind of relax. A startup, you never get to relax. There's always something more to do and you've got to always stay ahead of it. That won't be the case here. I'm not saying it's going to be simple. I'm saying that you have a certain amount of work to do. That's why I say do it in the summer or do it when your kids are otherwise,
But you're also coming together with a group of people. I mean, that's kind of what AH is getting to. It says, especially in Asian families, they use their cultural community to overcome government garbage.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, that's your first step is you're talking about like building a network first of people who want to do this together. So you're not alone in doing it.
And this is the thing is that as James Lindsay talked about when he was on with Benjamin Boyce, they want us to be atomized. They want us to be separate. Sending your kid to school isn't building community. It really isn't. People say, "Oh, my school's my community." It's like, is it really though? I mean, and if it is, you have a head start. So let's say best case, it really is what you say it is, that it is it's the center of your social life. It's the center of your kid's social life. And there's enough good there that the thing you don't like is the woke curriculum. Okay, guess what? You're ahead of the game because now you can go probably easily find 5 or 10 people that you already know.
Who want to
It's
leave.
the people who have a harder time with that because school, they have to realize I really don't know or like the other parents in my kids' class, or I wouldn't even know where to start. I don't even have a directory because they've kept us so separate and apart. That's where you have to start availing yourself of other types of community organizations. You might have to join something. You might have to, seriously, you might have to walk on down to your local church and say, I'm not a member. I'm not even Christian, but what would it take for me and a group of other people trying to educate some kids to rent out your basement? Would it take a donation? Would it take, what would it take for us to utilize some
Or
of this?
you might ask that if you're open-minded enough to have your kid go to a classical Christian school, that you might find that church already has an association with the school.
You
My
might.
church has one.
Exactly.
I wanted to put up something
yeah.
wrote Jeanette gives another super chat. Thank you, beautiful lady. She says, unless something changes, we're headed to everything being tied to money and our compliance to what the government deems acceptable.
Absolutely. And so, yes, people are going to have to do this. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you like, oh, it's a piece of cake. It's so easy, but it is easier than the people pushing school choice want you to believe. And the school choice process and selecting a school and staying on top of the school and making sure it still sticks with your values and isn't getting regulated into something you didn't want is going to be hard. Don't kid yourself. And if you ask too many questions and they kick you out, then what? If you get into it and you realize this isn't what I wanted, what are you going to do next? Might you have to pay the money back? That's another thing that could happen. We saw that with the money they just sent us for COVID relief for our children. Then they sent us money. We're like, I didn't ask for this. What is this? Then I get something from the IRS saying, oh, if you did this, that, and the other, you might have to pay it back. It's like, I didn't frigging ask for it in the first place. And you surely didn't send it with a warning telling me you might have to pay it back. So, government does this. They put these golden handcuffs on you and tell you they're helping you. Well, you know what would really help us? Stop taking our money. If they actually cared about us and cared about our kids, they would say, obviously we can't do this job very well. Look at our scores. They suck. If you have no other options, you want to keep using what we've got, there it is. It's there. But if you can find a better way, check a box on your taxes and opt out. And you don't have to do this. And imagine a world in which the Catos and the John Locke Foundations and the Heritage Foundations and the other supposedly conservative think tanks and the Betsy DeVosses and all these other people with all their money, the Walton Family Foundation and all of these. Imagine instead they lobbied for a provision for all taxpayers to be able to choose. Keep taking my taxes and putting it towards the public system because that's so I'm used to it. Or no, let me decide each year where to charitably donate education funds because I believe in education is good for a free society. And I will then tell you how much I donated and I'll tell you where I donated it to and give you the receipt and we're all good. Now the money's going from the donor directly to the recipient, who is probably going to pay closer attention as a donor to what the recipient is doing with their money And maybe
Yes.
the next year they give to a different recipient because they
Yeah,
don't
the
like what
whole,
that
like,
one.
the tax funding thing is you're so separate from what your
You're
money goes
so
to that you're
separated
not
from what
like
it's doing, you stop paying
yeah,
attention and you're paying for your own demise.
yeah,
Whereas if you, the childless taxpayer who's paying all this money into schools to educate a bunch of brats to take your rights away, wouldn't you rather be in charge of that? I talk to so many people who tell me like, well, I care about the society being educated. Good. Then I have absolute full faith that you would still voluntarily contribute
yeah,
to your choice of school. And you could then research it. You could ask your friends, your nephews, your nieces, your brothers, your sisters, if they have kids, where do you send your kids to school? Are you happy with it? Maybe I should send the money there. You could create groups of people could create scholarship funds. And guess what would probably not happen as a result? The cost of education would not go up. It would probably go down. Because when it's really truly a free market that's responsive to market forces, as in the individual using it is choosing whether it's serving their needs, value for value, prices don't artificially go up. This is going to pump money into a system where suddenly they're going to go, well, we, the Fancy Crest Academy, had a waiting list a mile long before school choice, and 50% of our applicants could pay full ride, 50% couldn't. Now the 50% that couldn't are getting an influx of money. Okay, that's less money we have to put out in our, from our endowment for scholarships. We're going to charge the people who can pay that much more because they could pay. And now we need a new gymnasium. We need higher salaries. Remember college?
yeah.
Remember what happened to college? Now you're going to see it replicated in the private system for schools. And to me, this is like as obvious as the nose on my face. But when I try to explain it to people, they tell me I'm, crazy. I'm a conspiracy theorist, what have you. And
It's
that's
just gonna make things worse, though, is what you think.
that's my concern. And put it this way, whether I can prove it or not isn't really the issue. The issue is the people who are selling this don't want to address these concerns or questions when they come up. They haven't put guardrails in place that say things, for example, as we're passing this law, we're putting in a provision that says there can be no regulations without a 3/4 vote of the legislature. Like everyone has to agree, or you'll never have to pay the money back no matter what. Or if a school kicks you out because you ask too many questions, like you can sue them or something like that. Like they don't put any protections in there for the taxpayers. They don't put any protections in there for the parents, and they certainly don't put any in for the recipients of the money. There's no guardrails that I can see. And so they'll say, you're misrepresenting the statute. There's nothing in there now but regulations. I'm like, have you ever known things to be permanent in government? Remember they said the Patriot Act would be temporary? You remember
Yeah.
they said the Emergency Authorization Use of Force Act would be temporary? You
Yeah.
remember they said the Department of Homeland Security would be? Okay, well, here we are. And I learned from history. I'm not one of those people that says, this time it will be different because I want it really bad.
No. They always say it's gonna be temporary. Remember the
Yeah.
immigration relief, what was it, when Obama was like, the DREAM Act or whatever? He's like, "This
Yes.
is temporary, and I look to Congress to solve this."
Yeah. So I'm for ingenuity. And my question is for all these extremely rich people who have poured tons of money into ed tech startups and into micro school companies and all these kinds of things. They've poured billions into these kinds of startups that they say are going to solve our education problem, except for one thing. If those companies are looking forward to getting their mitts on the government's education dollars, that's what they want to sell to. That's not solving a parent's problem. These same foundations could have put money out there for scholarships. They could have put money into funding the campaigns of people fighting for real liberty, meaning government out, separation of education and state, period. They could have funded that. They didn't. And so my question is, why? And the only conclusion I've come to is that they don't really believe in it. They either have fully bought into the idea that government should own education and run it, or they just don't trust parents. They don't
We
trust us to do the
need to
job.
abolish the Department of Education.
Well, we can't do that right away because they've been anticipating it. And as my guest the other day, Lynn Taylor, pointed out, they've prepared a contingency plan so that if a president came in and did that, they are ready to fan out into the other agencies to do their dirty work just the same. So first we have to choke them off. We have to choke off the funding. And the way we choke off that funding is make sure you elect governors and legislatures and, at the state level that are less interested in sending the funding and using the funding that they have. So in other words, if you get a governor who says, keep your damn money, I'm not doing that pronoun thing. I'm not doing the bathroom thing. We're not doing that. We'll figure it out. My population is just going to deal with freedom over here and keep your stupid ESSER money.
Yeah.
We don't want it. Suddenly, people are going to be loath to send the tax money or appropriate the tax. They won't appropriate it if they're not using it. And when you choke off the money and they have no reason for existing, then you can shut them down. But as long as the money is still going into the federal government for education guarantees and all this junk, it's going to get used. You can't just turn off a switch. So we've got to do it.
Politicians who are willing to walk away from that money are few and far between. So
they
when you
are,
find
and
them,
part of why
yeah.
they need it so badly is that we parents need to question a couple of narratives that are really important. First one is that, government should educate everybody, or should make sure everybody gets an education. No, that's part of parenting. Do you want them to make sure every kid gets fed? I mean, do you? Because what kind of a moral hazard is it if you tell a person, go ahead and reproduce and
But
we'll take care of your babies?
they're moving more and more things into that realm of government.
No, I know.
But let me just, I have a point on that. They've moving, for anybody who's not paying attention to this, they've done it with education for a while now, where people just kind of, I think the average person just thinks, well, yeah, naturally the government's responsible for education. Like that's the way it's always been. They're doing it with healthcare now, with this, all this memeing, this propaganda where they repeat the same idea over and over, and you get multiple impressions of it, of like, healthcare is a human right and it's the government's responsibility. And it's not the government. But one day, if they're successful, like, who knows how many years from now, people will be thinking like, yeah, it's always been the government domain, healthcare, of course. Like they move more and more things into that, like, this is the job of the government. And I only mention that because if you think of something that you don't think of as like the domain of the government, like maybe you're a person who doesn't think healthcare is the domain of government. And then it helps you to get out of thinking that way about education.
Exactly.
Does that make sense? My brain's still flu foggy.
No,
but
I think that's a great way to go about it, is think of something that you really wouldn't want them to come in and say, this is what you need to do, not just for yourself, but for your children. And that's why I was sort of hoping that all the gender stuff would awaken parents and say, wait a minute, if the government thinks it knows better than I do what sex my child should be.
Right.
Okay. That my child's childhood delusions should be affirmed and that I shouldn't be told about it. That I, and that's something I did. If you'll indulge me for a minute, and then I have to go pick up my daughter soon. Yeah. But one of the things I want your audience to know is that the argument that schools are using in states, a lot of states have this as state policy, by the way, New Jersey in particular, so does California, not to tell parents if students self-identify as trans, or even non-binary, or if they want to change their sex in any way, shape, or form into a synthetic sex on paper and names. And the policy is not to tell the parents. The argument they use is the parents might hurt them. There might be abuse. It is literally not the job of the state to prevent abuse. Let me repeat that. It is not the job of the state to prevent abuse. They can't, just like they can't prevent crime. Okay. We don't live in Minority Report. However, as reporters, mandatory reporters of abuse, if they sincerely believe that parents are abusive, such that they can't tell them about a kid's decision or coming out or anything like that, they're duty bound to report it. So the proof they don't really believe that is they're not reporting it.
Yeah,
if
they're not.
Genuinely believe that these parents were abusive bigots. And I mean, it's one thing to be bigoted. It's another thing to be an abusive bigot. It's not the school's job to tell you what to feel about things. Okay. You can go, it's legal still to be a parent and be a bigot by their definition. Okay. It's just not, it's not legal to hit your kid over it, okay, and abuse them. But if they're genuinely, sincerely afraid of abuse and they think it's a real thing that's happening, they're duty bound to report it. So the fact that they're not instigating a report with the Child Protective Services and they're covering it up tells you they don't really believe there's abuse. They just don't want the parents to interfere.
No.
And that, to me, is abuse, because children who ask a ton of questions about sex, children who are insecure in their identity, etc., almost always have something else going on. Not saying abuse in the home. I'm saying a mental illness, insecurity, autism spectrum disorder, ADD, OCD, any number of things that can come up in preteens and early adolescence. And the government itself knows it. If you go to the CDC website and you look at what a teenager is and how the teenage brain works and how the preteen brain works, the CDC itself says they're terrible at forward thinking and planning. They don't think about consequences, etc. It's right there. They know. And yet there are policies that say, we're not going to tell. We're going to hide it from the parents. So if they do this right now in the public schools and they start taking government money into the private schools where they're already doing the affirmation in a lot of private schools, do you really think they're going to keep it out of there for long?
Right.
So it's just something I wanted to mention, because a lot of people fail to ask that question. Like, why are you then covering up abuse? If you really believe the parents are so abusive, why are you covering it up?
Yeah, that's a great way of just flipping it.
Just flip it
Before
around
you
on them.
leave, I just had a couple things.
Yep.
This is where you guys can follow Deb, Pirate Tomsky,
Thank you.
and Cheeky Mirror linked it too. Night Train reminds 113 watching, 83 likes, smash the like button. Yes, please like the video. Also, if you guys appreciate Deprogrammed and the content, you can support us at our Patreon or Locals or Subscribestar, and I greatly appreciate it. Pyro had a couple more comments. Pyro's like, I appreciate the idea. Thank you for bringing up my comment, Keri. I just know people are way too busy or lazy or both to put that much time into it. Let me just address that, because then he also says if American has a problem, the solution is put more time into it or put more money into it. Most of the time, we're going to put more money into it. I think there's two kinds of people. Some people will put more time into it, and those people need to do what Deb is talking about. Those people will the people who will put the time into it and buckle down, like, they need to do what she's saying. If you want, on the other hand, though, just to put more money into it, then I would suggest you find out what school alternatives exist in your area already. Like where I'm at, for example, I can recommend a couple of different schools. I know friends of mine who have kids have their kids in these classical schools. One's a private Christian classical school that are like have great recommendations. So if you can't put the time into it, there are options, and you just have to find out what's already out there in your area.
Here's the thing is, the way we're going to really move the ball forward towards education freedom is when we reach a greater critical mass of people who are not engaging with the system at all.
Yeah.
We doubled the number of homeschoolers in the last year alone. That's huge. We're up to double digits at percent. I think it's like 11 or 12% of American school children are homeschooling now. If that could happen without a dime from the government, then I would encourage people to think long and hard about what their options are, because imagine the political clout we would have. And I'm not saying you have to homeschool, but imagine the political clout we would have if we were independently educating our kids, even while they kept our money as an insurance policy to leave us alone, just like stay away from us and let us go do our own thing. But then increasingly, we would be a voting block of people who, the politicians might have to listen to us. They're not going to listen to us when we're in the system, when we're taking the money. They're never going to listen to us.
No, because we're on the teat.
That's right.
This just made me laugh when it came in, and I just had to put, Keri, I only love you for your antibodies. I only love you for your antibodies. I like a good pun. Thank you, sir. You made me laugh.
Exactly. And Greg had a great idea too.
What do you say?
Is that if you are homeschooling and you know somebody who can't, but you'd be willing, you want to gather together people to try to help out with that. See about that. Parents who would love to homeschool, but they don't think they can, join a homeschooling group anyway online. See if you can find some people and network with them and say, like, what would it take? What would it take for me to be able to participate in your co-op or in your group, even if I physically can't be present most of the time? I need some help, and this is my situation. You'd be surprised.
So I know you have to go.
Thank
I want to
you.
thank you for
I
hanging
have to
out
pick my daughter up
today.
at co-op. I'm
Yeah.
not there. I'm the one who's not there. My daughter's at homeschool co-op right now, and I'm here. See, there
This
you
is
go.
just a reminder to follow Deb Fillman at The Reason We Learn on here on YouTube and on Twitter at Deb_Fillman, Fillman. The links are in the chat. Deb, thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a pleasure. And thank you to the audience. You guys are the best.
Cool.
You have like the coolest audience ever. So
Aw.
thank you guys so much. And I'm going to take off and go get the girl, and I will see you around.
Cool. Thanks, Deb. I'm gonna stick around for just a minute. So
Okay, bye,
when
guys.
Deb leaves, I wanted to just let you guys know. Oh, now I can see my face. I look pretty bad, pretty gnarly. Sorry. I wanted to let you know. I'm sorry. Like I said, I've been gone for a week with the flu. I do have a couple of announcements I forgot at the beginning. And one of those is here, I wrote them down so I wouldn't forget. Monday is my birthday. I'm very excited. I love October. It's the best month of the year because it's fall and the changing weather and it's cooler and the leaves and everything about the fall. I love it. Plus it's my birthday month and my husband's birthday month and there's Halloween. It's like the best month ever. Anyway, Monday's my birthday and so I thought I'm going to do a stream. I'm not going to take the day off since I had to miss so much this week. And I thought I wanted to be a special stream though. So on Monday at the normal time at noon Central Time, my guest is going to be my husband, Anthony Garcia. For the first time ever, we're going to do a live stream together, a birthday live stream. And I hope you tune in that day. We're going to talk about music. We're going to talk about the renovation stuff he's been learning. And I'm just really excited. You guys I know that you'll be kind with him. And if you haven't already, you can check out his music over at Anthony Garcia Music here on YouTube. And yeah, I'm really excited about that. We'll figure that out for Monday. The other announcement is the Women Leaving the Left event that was rescheduled is we're close to having a confirmed date. It's going to be in November, and I'll let you know for sure. It's tentatively looking like November 19th, which is a Saturday. And it looks like it's sponsored by Gun Owners of America. And it's going to be me, Megan Murphy, Isabella Malbin, Michelle Evans here in Texas, Antonia Okafor Cover. And we're going to be doing a whole day's events, including not just the panel, but we're going to do a day at the gun range and have some shooting instruction. So if you are in the Austin or Round Rock, Texas area, just keep in mind in November, likely November 19th, we're going to be doing this day of like Women Leaving the Left, a panel, and a day at the gun range. And we'll have different options for if you want to do one or all of those things. And so that'll be fun. Hey, Lissa K. Oh, I'm sorry you're going to be traveling. Lissa, I owe you a message. I just remembered today. So I'll let you know about that knitting retreat. Okay. And then the last thing I was going to say is at the end of the month, going to Orlando to be a part of Chrissy Mayer's Content House again. Anthony's going with me, and there's going to be a lot of great people there. Some of the same people from last time, some new people. Mike Harlow's going to be there this time, I think. Gino Bisconti, Lila Hart, Alex Stein. It's going to be so much fun. The Ryan Cannell, I think, is going to be there. The Friday Night Tights and Geeks and Gamers guys are going to be in Orlando at the same time. So I'll be at the Friday Night Tights meetup that weekend. So if you're in Orlando, Florida, come and say hello. Closer to the date, I'll put some links out to where these things are happening. But anyway, that's all. That's all the announcements, I think. Oh yeah, and political ponerology. Dion in the chat. Thank you, Dion. Who else is reading this? Again, even if you can't be in the book club, I think you should read this book. It's the best book. Like, it's my favorite one that we've ever done. Arnara says, will Alex Stein do the chip challenge? I don't know what that is. What's the chip challenge? You'd have to I missed that. I must have missed something he did. I've been in like pretty much bedridden for 3 days. If it happened in the past 3 days, I definitely don't know about it. So, um, somebody asked if I had COVID. You know what? A couple of people asked me that. I already had COVID last year. I don't think this is COVID. I didn't do a test because I don't care. I'm not doing it. It felt like the flu. Um, and I don't think it was COVID. It didn't feel the same. And I don't know if anybody else had this experience, if you had COVID, but some of my friends who've had the same experience where when I had COVID, like it felt so different from a regular cold or flu or anything. It did not feel normal. It felt completely man-made. It felt engineered. There was something really wrong with it. This was awful. This was an awful flu, but it did not feel like it did not feel human made. That's just Laura says you could have had it again. I did. Well, I could have. I don't know. I just choose to think it was the flu. Either way, I'm not taking that mRNA crap. So, yeah, the chip challenge. What is the chip challenge? I don't know what you guys are talking about. I gotta go find this out. Okay, I think that's it. Thanks for hanging out today. Thanks for being a lovely audience, as Deb said. Always love talking with you guys. I love reading the chats. Thank you if you support the show. A special shout out to those who financially contribute in even a small way. I know we're going to be getting the YouTube memberships up soon. I've been late to do that. So if you want to support even at like $1 a month, eternally grateful for that. If you like the programming, we had to postpone Mystery Chris and I. We were going to do a really special pop culture this week that we had to postpone because I was sick. We're going to be making that up, and I'll let you know when that's happening. But gosh darn it! Look, the porn bots had to show up right at the end. We were about to leave without you guys coming back, and there you are. Okay, you guys have a good weekend. Take care. Oh, the mission statement for the Church on the Square in Georgetown, Texas, is to revive the church, reach the city, and renew the culture. I happened to attend the very first church service just because I saw an ad on Facebook, which is interesting because I know other people who found the church that way, and Facebook has since stripped our church of the ability to advertise. So I'm here to tell the deprogrammed audience, anyone who's interested, where they can find them. That first service, by the way, that was when I knew I had found my home, because the sermons are something that feeds your mind and your soul. Our pastor is Bradley J. Helgerson. I often describe him as a mix between Jordan Peterson and C.S. Lewis. If you're interested in listening to some of the sermons, you can find them all online on the Church on the Square YouTube page. You can also find them online at thechurchonthesquare.org. If you happen to live in the Georgetown, Texas area, you're also welcome to visit with us any Sunday. We meet at 10 a.m. outside right on the Georgetown Square on the courthouse lawn. If it's hot or if it's raining, then we meet in Ken's Guitars, which is also right there on the square. I hope to see some of you there, and thank you very much.